Hello, everyone. I'm Emma, and if you've got a moment, I've got a story that's a bit of a roller coaster, one that dives into love, betrayal, and the fight for dignity. Before we dive in, let me set the stage and introduce you to the cast of this little drama of mine. It all begins with me, Emma. I was born into what many would call privilege, with a silver spoon and all that jazz. But despite the cushy start, I was raised to value hard work over handouts. My dad is the king of the engine additive world, a self-made man who turned a niche into an empire. My mom, she built a beauty salon empire from the ground up, making her name synonymous with style. When they divorced when I was 19, it could have been messy, but they kept it classy, splitting everything down the middle while somehow maintaining a friendship. Dad stayed single, content with his business and bachelorhood, while mom remarried but didn't expand the family beyond me. Enter Jake, stage right, my husband, or as I've come to think of him, the catalyst of my personal upheaval. We got married when I was fresh out of college and had just landed a job teaching music to kids with more energy than sense. Life seemed pretty sweet until we hit a bump. I got pregnant, and suddenly Jake's true colors started to show. One lazy Sunday, sprawled on the couch with his feet up, Jake casually lobbed a grenade into our lives. "Emma, babe, why don't you just quit your job and stay home with the baby? We'll manage." I nearly choked on my tea. Quit my job? Jake, you know we can't afford that on your salary alone. Plus, I love my work. He waved a hand dismissively, a smirk playing on his lips. Come on, Em, it's not like we're ordinary folks. Your dad's loaded. A little help from him and we're golden. My blood boiled. That's not the point, Jake. I'm not tapping into my parents' wealth for our day-to-day expenses. We agreed to live within our means. But Jake wouldn't let it go. Over dinner, in front of his parents no less, he brought it up again. Emma's considering taking some time off work, with the baby coming and all. His mom, Carol, a woman with a sharp tongue and an eye for advantage, jumped in. Oh, that's wonderful. With Emma's family, you two don't have to worry about a thing. I clenched my fork a little tighter, trying to keep my cool. Actually, we haven't decided anything yet, and we intend to manage on our own, thank you. Jake's dad, Frank, never one to miss a beat, chimed in with a chuckle. Why play it the hard way, Emma? A little help from your folks and you could be living easy. Why waste that opportunity? The conversation spiraled from there, with Jake and his parents painting grand pictures of a life funded by my parents' money. Every word felt like a betrayal, pushing the knife a bit deeper. They didn't see me, they saw a ticket to an easy life. That night, lying in bed next to Jake, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. Jake, do you really think we should be relying on my parents like that? I whispered, hoping for some sign I'd misread the situation. He rolled over, facing me with those eyes that once melted my heart. Emma, it's not about need. It's about what's smart. Your parents can afford it, and we deserve a break. Why not take it? The word deserve echoed in my head long after Jake had drifted off to sleep. It was clear we were on different paths with different values. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd missed the signs and where we'd go from here. After that first clash with Jake about money and pride, I hoped maybe, just maybe, we'd find our way back to the same page. But oh, was I wrong? Enter the in-laws, stage left, with their own special brand of chaos. Jake's folks weren't exactly the poster children for self-reliance. They had a knack for sniffing out a free meal from miles away, and my family's wealth was like a beacon to them. One evening, as we sat around our cramped living room, Frank went on about a new business opportunity that needed a small investment to get off the ground. Carol, with her voice dripping with fake sweetness that could give you cavities, chimed in, with your family's resources. I bet you could easily help us out. It's such a sure thing, Carol said, trying to sound casual. I struggled to keep my cool. Carol, Frank, I've told you before, we're managing our finances independently. My parents' money isn't part of this equation. But Frank, persistent as ever, didn't back down. Come on, Emma. It's not like you'd even miss it. What's a few thousand to your dad? He probably spends that on golf in a weekend. The audacity of it floored me. Here they were, sitting in our home, eating our food, and treating my family's hard-earned money like it was theirs for the taking. Jake, trying to play mediator, chimed in. Maybe they have a point. It's just a loan, right? We could help out family. Family? I nearly choked on the word. Jake. When did we decide it was our job to bankroll your parents' dreams? The room went ice cold. Carol seized the moment, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Well, I never. Here we thought family helped each other out. But if you're going to be stingy, I saw red. Working for what you have isn't being stingy, Carol. It's called being responsible. Maybe you should try it sometime. Frank attempted to smooth things over, but the damage was done. Look, Emma, no need to get upset. We're just talking. Talking? My sarcasm was barely contained. Seems like all we ever do is talk about how my family can solve your problems. After they finally left, with Jake apologizing for his parents' misunderstanding, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-on invasion of our lives by people who saw me not as a daughter-in-law, but as a walking, talking ATM. When our little Lily came into the world, life took an unexpected turn. You think the arrival of a grandchild would bring out the best in people, but not with Jake's folks. They showed up at the hospital with what had to be the cheapest onesie from the discount bin. It still had the clearance sticker on it. Meanwhile, my parents came with a beautiful hand-knit blanket and top-notch baby gear. You'd have thought World War II was about to break out in that hospital room. Wow, really laying it on thick, aren't they? Carol quipped, eyeing the gifts with a mix of disdain and envy. Must be nice to just throw money around. Bet they could have just gotten you a house instead of all this fluff. Jake, with a chuckle, added, yeah, Mom's got a point. Your folks sure do hold back. A house might have been more practical, huh? My heart sank. Here I was holding our newborn, and all they could talk about was how my parents should have spent their money. It stunned to hear Jake echo his mom's words. Was our daughter just a dollar sign to them? I tried to keep the peace, biting back my growing anger. Well, it's not about the price tag, right? It's the thought that counts. But Frank wasn't done. Oh, sure. But when you think about it, a nice little investment in property, that's a gift that keeps on giving. The ride home from the hospital was tense. Jake tried to smooth things over, saying his parents were just old-fashioned and didn't mean anything by it. But doubts started creeping in about why Jake really married me. Was it love, or was my family's bank account the main attraction? A few weeks later, during one of their unsolicited visits, Carol brought it up again. We were all crammed in our living room, Lily fussing in my arms, and Carol couldn't resist a jab at the new stroller my mom had bought us. Must be nice having your folks shower Lily with all these expensive toys and gadgets. Though a contribution to a house fund would have been more useful, don't you think? Her voice stripped with the passive-aggressive tone I'd come to dread. Jake, sitting beside his mom, nodded. Actually, babe, we've been talking. Maybe your parents could help us out with a down payment instead of more baby stuff. Makes sense, right? I was floored. Not only were Jake's parents relentless, but now Jake was on board with turning our daughter's birth into a bargaining chip for financial gain. It felt like I was living in some twisted reality where love and family meant less than material wealth. Is that what this is about for you, Jake? Using my parents for money? I couldn't hide the hurt in my voice. I thought we were in this together, for better or worse, not for richer or poorer. Jake looked taken aback, but Carol just sniffed dismissively. Well, when your wife's parents are rich, it's only practical to think about these things. After they finally left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lily asleep beside me. The realization hit me hard. My marriage, my family, it all felt like a transaction, and I was the currency. The past few years had been a roller coaster, to say the least. Lily had grown into a fiery 3-year-old full of life and laughter, but life threw us some curveballs I never saw coming. First was Mom. The accident was sudden, a shock to all of us. I was drowning in grief, barely holding it together for Lily. But Jake's first question wasn't about how I was coping. No, it was, so, how much are you getting from your mom's will? It felt like a slap in the face. My mom wasn't even cold, and here he was, eyeing her legacy like a vulture. According to Mom's will, I inherited the barber shop chain. I knew nothing about running a business, but Jake was quick to offer his expertise. Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a knack for business, he said, all confidence and smiles. I was too lost in my grief to argue, so I let him take the reins, though I made sure the ownership papers stayed in my name. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn things around for us. Then barely a year later, Dad passed away from a heart attack. Losing both my parents in such a short time broke something in me. I needed Jake more than ever, but all he could talk about was what we'd inherited from Dad. The day after Dad's death, Jake's parents came over. I expected at least a shred of decency, a moment of respect for my loss. But no, they dove straight into speculations about Dad's wealth. So, Emma, must be a hefty sum coming your way, huh? Frank said, barely containing his glee. I saw red. Can you not, for once, just stop talking about money? I shouted the words, my anger exploding like shrapnel. Carol put on her most offended face. Well, I never. We're just concerned about the family's future. No need to be rude. Jake, as always, tried to play peacemaker. They're just curious. It's a big deal, you know. A big deal. I echoed, my voice rising. My parents are gone, Jake, and all you and your parents can think about is cashing in. Is that all I am to you? A bank? The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to slice with a knife. Jake looked between me and his parents, mumbling a half-hearted apology, but the damage was done. I couldn't stand the sight of them. Their greed, their complete lack of empathy. Get out, I said, my voice steady but cold. They left, Carol muttering under her breath, and Frank with a scowl. Jake lingered, trying to justify his parents' behavior, but I was done listening. 2 days after Dad died, Jake burst through the door earlier than usual, beaming with barely contained excitement. Babe, I've got awesome news, he announced. I struck a deal to sell the hairdresser chain. Can you believe it? My jaw nearly dropped. What? You did what? Without even asking me. I was fuming, a mix of betrayal and disbelief washed over me. Before I could fully process it, his folks showed up, ready to celebrate like we hit the jackpot. They brought in a feast from some fancy restaurant and a bunch of high-end decor that screamed, high roller. Carol was all smiles, waving a brochure in my face. Guess what, honey? We sold the old condo and put a deposit on a beach house. We're all moving to the coast. I stared at her, feeling like I was trapped in some nightmarish scenario. Hold on, you what? Nobody asked me about moving. I don't want to live by the beach, I said, my frustration barely contained. The humidity, the wind, it's not ideal for a kid. Are you out of your mind? Carol waved off my concerns as if I were simply complaining about the weather. Oh, don't worry about that. We've also booked a cruise. You should come with us. It'll be fabulous. Where's all this money coming from? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. Oh, darling, with your father's passing and the sale of the salons, money's no object now. We're set for life. Yachts, private jets. We're living the dream, Carol replied, her eyes practically sparkling with dollar signs. I turned to Jake, utterly dumbfounded. Why are we even talking about selling my mom's business again? And what's this nonsense about being set for life? Babe, it makes sense, Jake said. Managing both businesses would be too much. We need to focus on what's more profitable. It's for our future, for our daughter's future. The greed and audacity of it all were overwhelming. Show me the financials for the salon, I demanded. I want to see everything before we make any rash decisions. Jake squirmed, avoiding eye contact. Look, it's all about our future, about making sure we're comfortable. His parents joined in, pressing me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. But all I could see were vultures circling. Why the rush to sell the hair salons? I pressed, needing answers. Jake shrugged, adopting a tone of fox reason. After your dad's gone, juggling both businesses just doesn't make sense. We need to focus on what brings in more money. The car oil business is a gold mine compared to the salons. His folks perked up at this, chiming in with their own opinions. Darling, think about it. Selling those little shops could give you a life of luxury. Why waste your time on them? Carol's voice dripped with greed. The sight of them practically salivating over my inheritance made my skin crawl. I want you to leave now, I said firmly, my resolve unwavering. This is a time to mourn my father, not to feast on what he left behind. Jake tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. And another thing, this is my inheritance we're talking about, mine. You and your parents have no say in this. The room grew icy as they realized I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. With heavy steps and skulls, they left, leaving me alone with the weight of the battle ahead. The dawn after my father's funeral found me enveloped in a fog of grief, the world around me reduced to a monotonous gray. That's when Jake decided it was time to inject his version of color into our lives. Over a breakfast that tasted like cardboard, he launched into his agenda. We need to call a meeting with the founders of your father's company, pronto, Jake declared, his voice slicing through the silence like a knife. I paused, toast halfway to my mouth, and stared at him. Jake, my father has just been buried. Can't this wait? I need some time to process everything. He dismissed my concerns with a flick of his hand. Time is money, babe. We need to act fast. Frustrated and seeking clarity, I reached out to our family lawyer for a breakdown of the barbershop chain's status and a primer on my father's business dealings. I hoped this information would give me some ground to stand on. A month passed in a blur of legal jargon and financial statements until Jake, accompanied by his parents, stormed into our house once more. They were brimming with unsolicited advice and greed-laden suggestions. Without even a greeting, Jake dove right in. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking, I'm the right person to lead your dad's company." The audacity of his claim left me speechless, but he wasn't done. "And I'll need a new car, something that screams business. Maybe the latest BMW will do the trick." Before I could respond, Carol chimed in with her own outrageous demands. "The coastal house is nearly ready. We just need to add another $300,000 for furniture. And dear, I expect you to set up an account for me. I need to maintain my lifestyle, after all." After listening to their endless demands, I knew what I had to do. It was as if a switch had flipped inside me. I grabbed the divorce papers like a shield and stepped forward, interrupting their chatter. "Jake, we need to talk," I announced, placing the papers before him on the coffee table. He picked them up, a frown creasing his forehead. "What's this?" His attempt at nonchalance couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. "Divorce papers," I said firmly. "I see you've had the business audited," I said, each word deliberate. "Jake, you've run it into the ground. It's teetering on the edge of ruin because of your mismanagement." His face drained of color like a guilty child caught in a lie. "I was trying to make things better," he stammered, his excuses as flimsy as his confidence. "Make it better by firing our most talented staff and neglecting the core of what made the business succeed?" I demanded, my voice rising with a mix of anger and betrayal. Carol, ever the meddler, couldn't resist intervening. "Now, dear, let's remember he's entitled to half of everything. Marriage binds assets, after all." I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no joy in it. "Nice try, but everything has been in my name since before I made the colossal mistake of marrying your son. He gets nothing from me." The room fell silent, their grand schemes shattering around them. "And another thing," I added, glaring at Jake, "you're going to pay back every penny you've cost the business. Every single penny." When the reality of the divorce finally hit Jake, his reaction was desperate. "Please, can't we talk about this? There has to be another way," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. His parents, not to be outdone in the drama department, launched into their own tearful performance. They lamented about sinking all their funds into the coastal house, a property now hanging by a thread without the next installment. "We're going to lose everything," his mother sobbed, her tears flowing freely. "Please think of what this means for us." I listened, my heart hardened by their previous actions, feeling nothing but detached coldness toward their plight. "Sorry, but that's your mess," I said, my tone unwavering. With newfound resolve, I guided them to the door, closing it and this chapter of my life behind them. In the days that followed, I didn't dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on the future, selling the apartment Jake and I once shared. The sale provided just enough for a quaint, welcoming house that promised a new beginning for my daughter and me. Stepping into our new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A sense of peace enveloped us in a way that had been missing for too long. The wheels of justice turned slowly but surely, and when they finally caught up with Jake, he was ordered to compensate for the turmoil he'd inflicted on the barbershop chain. The courts determined that his recklessness had a price, and he was forced to liquidate his share of our old apartment to meet his financial obligations. Watching him being held accountable for once felt like bittersweet vindication for the hardship he put us through. Out of nowhere, my phone rang one day. On the other end was my former mother-in-law, her voice laced with desperation. "We're in a bind. We need help to buy a place. Any amount would help," she pleaded, her audacity leaving me incredulous. I took a deep breath, collecting my thoughts before responding. "You made your bed," I replied, my tone steady and resolute. "It's time you lie in it." Ending the call, a mix of emotions washed over me. Anger at their continued sense of entitlement, but also a profound sense of freedom from their clutches. After everything that went down with the divorce and regaining control over my mom's barbershop chain, life finally started to brighten up again. It was a tough climb, but gradually the salons began to find their old spark. Bringing back the top stylists we'd lost felt like a victory parade, watching them walk back through those doors ready to bring their magic back to our chairs. The place came alive again. Turns out I was more cut out for the business world than I ever imagined. Each day was a new lesson, a new surprise about what I could achieve. If it hadn't been for being cornered by life's cruel twists, I might never have uncovered this side of me. Handling my dad's car oil business was another mountain to climb, so for now, I decided to bring in a manager to steer the ship while I got my bearings. It's all yours for now, but keep me in the loop, I told him, making it clear I was still in charge. Once Lily's old enough, maybe around 20, I'm thinking of passing it to her if she's interested. I want her to have options to choose her own path. Meanwhile, I dipped my toes into the business, learning the ropes. Our new home, just Lily and me, was a haven of peace, a world away from the turmoil we'd left behind. It was small, sure, but it was ours. A place where we could grow, heal, and build something new. Every corner filled with laughter, every nook cradling a memory we were making together. Out in the garden, Lily's laughter was balm to my soul. "Mommy, when I grow up I want to be just like you," she'd say, her eyes alight with wonder and admiration. "You're going to be even more amazing," I'd respond, pulling her into a hug. I knew deep down that we were on the brink of something wonderful, ready to meet whatever the future held with open arms and hopeful hearts.